Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
We use the word hello every single day. It feels like it is the most natural word in the world. But if you went back to the mid-19th century and said hello to your friends, they wouldn't think you were being friendly. They would think you were completely weird. So how did a loud, weird sound become one of the most popular words on the planet? Let's find out. The word hello is actually pretty young. If you were walking down a busy street in London or New York City back in 1850, you wouldn't hear it at all. To politely greet a neighbor, you would say good morning, greetings, or the classic how do you do. For hundreds of years, hello had a completely different job. Linguists, people who study language, have traced it back to older words used just to make a loud noise or grab attention. One clue, there was the old German hello used to shout, "Hey, you over there." Another clue, the French hunting call, hola, meaning stop the horses. And the Old English holla, used to shout across a large field or call hunting dogs. Holla, boy, catch the fox. That's why if you shouted hello at a friend back then, they would be so confused and think, why is he shouting at me? Am I a dog? But everything changed because of one invention. In 1876, a man named Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. For the first time in history, you could talk to someone who was many, many miles away just through a metal wire. It was pure magic, but it was also very awkward. Those early phones didn't have a ringer, and the line was always left open. You picked up the receiver, but you couldn't see the other person. You didn't know if they were even listening, so you needed a loud signal to say, "Hey, I'm here. I am ready to talk now." Bell himself had an idea. "Fear not, citizens, I have the perfect word. When you pick up this glorious device, you shall shout like a mighty sailor. Ahoy!" Yes, ahoy. It was an old sailing word. Sailors and pirates used it to shout at other ships on the ocean. Bell loved this word. That sucks. Excuse me? His name was Thomas Edison. In 1877, he was working very hard to improve Alexander Graham Bell's telephone because those early phones were terrible, noisy, full of static. He realized ahoy just wasn't sharp enough to cut through the bad connection. People needed a clearer, powerful signal to catch the attention of the person at the other end. He remembered that old, rough word people used to shout at hunting dogs to get their attention. One day, he picked up the receiver and shouted, "Hello!" It worked perfectly. The sharp H and the long, resonant O cut right through the crackling static. It was distinct, easy to hear, and impossible to confuse with everyday conversation. He wrote a letter to the boss of a telegraph company. He said, "I think we should use the word hello when we answer the telephone." The company agreed with him. Soon, the very first telephone books were printed. They had instructions on how to use this strange new machine. And the very first rule in the book? When you answer the telephone, say a firm and cheerful hello. But Alexander Graham Bell was a very stubborn man. He hated losing to Edison. For the rest of his life, even when everyone else in the world was using hello, Bell refused. Until the day he died, he always answered his telephone with a loud, proud ahoy, ahoy. Soon, telephones were spreading everywhere. But it was not like today. You couldn't just dial a phone number to call your friend. First, you had to talk to a telephone operator. The first telephone operators were mostly young men, but those guys? Complete nightmares. Rude, impatient, always arguing with customers. So, telephone companies started hiring women instead. And how did these women answer the phone all day long, hundreds of times a day? They said, hello. Because these women said the word so much, the public gave them a catchy nickname, Hello Girls. They became very famous and very respected. Because of the telephone and because of the hard-working Hello Girls, millions of people were suddenly hearing and saying this new word every single day. Slowly, the word escaped the telephone. People started using it when they saw each other in the street. It pushed away the old, stiff, formal greetings like, how do you do? Gradually, it became a normal, everyday greeting. Today, versions of hello exist in languages all around the world, often borrowed directly from English, especially because of telephones and later Hollywood movies. It's one of the most universally recognized words on Earth. 5 letters, one heartbeat of connection.